You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. This is episode 11, and in today's episode, I wanted to share kind of a tradition with you that I call the best and worst of my year. And so for this episode, it's the best and worst of my 2024. And I dive into a little bit more details on the 50-50 experience and that concept that I think I've talked about in my birthday episode that was just several episodes back. But sharing my best and my worst moments of each year has become a bit of a tradition for me. I have been doing it since 2020. And in the past, I did this via my email newsletter. But now, since I have a podcast, I thought I'd share this tradition here on the podcast. And here's why I love sharing this list of my best and my worst moments with you all every year. Number one, it's to remind you how normal it is to experience those peaks and those valleys in your life. Number two, it's to be in solidarity with you in this wild thing that we call the human experience. And number three, for me, it's a reason to take a pause and reflect back on the beauty of this messy thing that we call life, because even those worst moments were still moments too that were important parts of our lives, part of living this physical experience, part of being human. And no matter how much you do or how much you accomplish or how much you have success in your life, you cannot escape these worst moments. So I personally love the outdoors and the mountains because they remind me of this concept in such a really beautiful way. When you go hike to the summit of a peak or you head out on a trail for an adventure, there are going to be moments that fill you up and make you feel so alive and so free. And there will be moments that really don't feel so good, where you're out of breath on an uphill and you're questioning why you started the hike in the first place. You'll have moments when the sun is hot and beating down on your neck and making you feel weak and woozy, and maybe the mosquitoes are biting the back of you and making you itch like crazy. Maybe you're having weather issues, weather that's terrifying you or canceling your plans. The mountains are a beautiful reminder of our kind of high and low experience. They are as beautiful as they are rugged and unforgiving. The experience when you go outdoors is typically kind of that 50-50 experience relationship. It is the best and sometimes it is the worst. So these are the moments that make up a life as well. The highs and the lows, the anxiety and the joy. This is the human existence. This is how we all exist and experience life as human beings. And this is what it means to be alive, right? So I always like to remind myself that nothing has gone wrong, but I know that we make it harder on ourselves when we judge the hard moments in our lives, thinking that something has gone wrong or we're doing something wrong, right? So whenever I start to judge my life for not being this steady string of high moments, I like to remember that it's the same in the mountains. And for me personally, thinking about the mountains, thinking how the mountains have taught us all of these things in advance, it brings me so much peace. It grounds me. It helps me remember it's not supposed to be great all the time. And I'm doing it right. This is just how life is, right? And it's that sounds like such a simple thing to say, but it's really easy to forget that you will have your worst moments and you will have your best moments in any experience in any year of your life. So that's why, back in 2016, I actually got this quote on my arm, and it says, "On life and mountains, it is the same." And I'm always still being reminded of this lesson. It's something I have to constantly think of and remind myself of. And that is why I started doing this exercise of my best and worst moments. So without further ado, I'm going to just kick us off and share with you kind of a little behind the scene peek of my life a little bit. So this is a little bit more of an intimate episode. You're going to hear what were my personal high moments, what were my personal worst moments of 2024. And I encourage you, as I read through my list, I want to invite you to make your own list too before you head into finalizing your 2025 goals, because we're getting into that new year energy, thinking about what our goals are for the new year. I think it's nice to just pause and reflect back before we move forward. And this exercise is a really good exercise in reflection, thinking about those best and worst moments. So I'm going to start out with my top best moments of 2024. I usually do a list of 10 just to kind of keep it short or shorter than having a huge list. So I usually do 10 best, 10 worst. You could do top 5. You could do whatever you want. This is not graded. It's just an exercise that I really encourage you to do as a journaling reflection for yourself. So for me, number 1 on my list, this is in no particular order though, I put making climbing friends and making big progress on my lead climbing goals. Now, I did a whole episode number 8, I believe, on my rock climbing goals and progress. So definitely go check that out if you haven't yet. But just a little follow-up to those of you who did listen to that episode, I wanted to report back that I did end up getting a few more 510 leads checked off during my climbing trip in Spain with our clients. I got a 510A lead, a 510B lead, and a 510C. So for me, that was really validating. I've seen so much improvement in my mental space and my confidence when I'm sport climb leading, and I'm really, really proud of myself. And I can't wait to keep taking that goal further into 2025. So I definitely have plans to kind of keep improving this area of my skill set and my climbing. And I'm also really thankful for the small group of women that I met at the beginning of the year here in Colorado Springs that I go lead climbing with on a weekly basis. So they have been pivotal in helping this goal kind of see itself through in 2024. Okay, number 2, since we're talking about climbing, I'm also celebrating that we had our very first rock climbing retreat in Joshua Tree. As part of my company, this was our very first women's rock climbing retreat in March of 2024 with 18 women. It went so well. We had such an incredible weekend together. It solidified the fact that I want to keep doing rock climbing retreats as a part of what we offer at She Dreams of Alpine. If you are interested in those, I'll link it in the show notes, how you can join one of our wait lists for that. But it's so fun for me to get to share this sport of rock climbing as well as backpacking, because that is the main thing we teach here at She Dreams of Alpine is backpacking. But for me, it's also fun to share rock climbing with so many of my clients. And in the desert of Joshua Tree is such a magical place to do that. So number 3 is also rock climbing related. That is just, I figured I'd go with a theme for the top 3, but that is going on the Spain climbing retreat. That was a more intimate retreat that we planned. It's our very first international retreat. We went with 7 women, and it was truly, really such an incredible week of climbing. And the group of women that came with us there, it was just it was perfect. Everyone got along so well. I felt very close to all of those women by the end of the week. I really am excited to get to know them more, see them progress in their climbing. It was definitely one of the highlights of my year. And I hope those women feel similarly. I think they do. I know that we had a great time together. And being in Spain, the weather was amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better way to end 2024. So number 4 on my list is, after a couple of tougher years in business, post-pandemic, I think that in 2024, my team and I finally made a turn and got to build back up, emergency savings. So I had some better years before the pandemic and had a savings for my business. And then the last couple of years were actually pretty tough years. And so definitely dwindled into some of that. And so this year we got to build some of that back up. And it feels good for me, like a big win. And some of the best moments about 2024 was like getting my shit together around that and feeling like I have some of my ducks in a row when it comes to that. And my team and I worked our buns off this year to build that back up, to create a lot of value, to do some really great events. So I'm like really, really proud of us. Number 5 on my list of best moments is the Royal Arch Loop in the Grand Canyon with my friend Meg. So this has to make the list. It's definitely one of my top moments and backpacking accomplishments. It was one of the hardest, most technical backpacking routes that I've personally taken on with a friend, and it took place in a very remote and isolated part of the Grand Canyon. For me, I feel like it showed me how much I've grown as a backpacker and outdoor educator since my very first backpacking trip in 2013, which was over, 10 years now. But completing that adventure for me this year with my friend, just me and her, 2 women alone in the desert, doing a hard thing, right? It was a full circle moment for me. Like at the end of that, I just was like, damn, I've come a long way. Because Allison back in 2013, who was like, had never really done anything in the outdoors and got invited on our first trip, could never have imagined herself being in this place. Let alone being an outdoor educator, but like doing something like that too. And we had a blast. Like, even though it was a physically and mentally challenging kind of trip, and it was technical, it kind of like called us to use all of our different skill sets. We felt good about it because it was in our wheelhouse, and we did that adventure because of that aspect. So that is number 5 on my list. So number 6 on my list is another one of our in-person experiences we have at She Dreams of Alpine. It was getting to guide 24 clients of ours in our second summer cohort of the Adventurous Reinvention Experience coaching program. So this is, for those of you who don't know, our 4-month coaching program, and it has an in-person retreat where we get to go backpacking together at the end of it. It was even better than I could imagine, and meeting more of our clients in real life for like an epic backpacking adventure together was really so fun. I formed some really strong connections with some of the women there and made memories in the mountains with them that I personally will never forget. For me, it's also always super fun sharing the Eastern Sierra Mountains. Those are the mountains that shaped me, where I first cut my teeth and learned how to backpack. It's really fun to share that area with my clients. And I'm very excited to do more of this again in 2025. So I'll drop the link to the waitlist for that. We likely will announce the next group for the Adventurous Reinvention Experience in late March, and that usually kicks off in May, and then our in-person retreats are usually in late July or August. So stay tuned. Check out the show notes to join the waitlist for that. Number 7, I got to go to Moab in Utah 2 times this year, which is one of my favorite places to go personally, especially since I live much closer here in Colorado. So I got to go on a solo trip. That's just something I try to plan every year, is a solo trip to Moab, like in the springtime sometime. I like to go up there in the van, camp, work, hike out there. Sometimes I have a friend that meets me out there. It's one of my favorite places. So I usually try to do that, once a year. And then a second time I went out there for my 35th birthday in November, and I got to take my dad on his very first desert camping adventure. And we took him on the Fiery Furnace hike in Arches National Park. So I love anytime I get to spend in the desert. Moab holds a really special place in my heart. And yeah, that definitely was a highlight for my year. So number 8 on my list of best moments was spending a week in Albuquerque, New Mexico with one of my best friends to focus on planning out our 2024 year. Now, this is something I did at the beginning of 2024, but it was really special to me because I don't get to see her very often. We don't live in the same area, but it was basically a weekend with one of my best friends, And it was really needed at that time. It was also around the time we had lost Lincoln. But we got the most adorable Airbnb. We called it a CEO retreat. She has her own business as well. We made homemade meals. We worked through journaling prompts. We made mocktails. We hot tubbed. We went for hikes. We did yoga. We got to like dream big for the new year. And that fills me up. Like getting to give myself that time to think about and plan and create a vision for what I want to create is like very, very fulfilling for me. So I really hope that this becomes a tradition for us. It probably won't happen in January, but maybe like early February. If not, I hope I do this for myself. But it was really special getting to do that with her. Number 9 on my list is actually something I'm really proud of Michael this year, and working on creating his first short film with one of his best friends. And like for me, the reason why this makes one of my best moments for the year is he has so much potential. He's very good at what he does, in my opinion. I might be a little bit biased, but he's always wanted to get more into filmmaking. And he has kind of just like, it's been a lot of reasons, but he's, counted himself out in the past of like starting this project. But this year, watching him dive headfirst into a film project, working hard in the evenings, in his spare times, being willing to fail and like do it messy in order to make progress on one of his bigger dreams to like start doing more filmmaking. I'm just super proud of him and all the hard work that him and his friend have been doing all year for it. Like they met in Vegas. They had like actors and they had, all these, I don't even know how to say out everything properly, but they did like a big shoot one weekend, then they did another reshoot, and he's been editing everything. And it's like, they're still working on it. The film should be released sometime early next year. And then they already have the works for another film to get started. So I'm just really proud of his work and doing something that was a big dream of his for a long time. So number 10. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because at the time of this recording, number 10 is Christmas puppy. And at the time of recording this today, I do not yet have my puppy, but Michael and I are literally driving up tomorrow to Utah to get our new puppy, which is a 9-week-old Italian Greyhound, which was the same breed as my past dog, Lincoln. And I am so excited, y'all. Like I've been really missing having a dog in my life. I'm just the kind of girl who needs a dog in her life. And I'm really ready to welcome in some new puppy love into my life and to go on adventures with my new pup in 2025. So definitely keep an eye out on Instagram for lots of puppy stories, but I just know that's going to be one of my best moments. It already has been. Thinking about getting the puppy, seeing pictures of him, seeing little videos of him as we're like leading into picking him up. It's already like filled me with so much joy. So that had to make the list because we're picking him up literally tomorrow before the year ends. Okay, so that was my top 10 moments of 2024. So now let's dig into the top 10 worst moments of 2024. So number 1 on my list is definitely losing Lincoln. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but for those of you who don't know, Lincoln was my dog. I had him since I was 19 years old. He was 15 and a half years old when he passed away. We lost him in January of 2024. So he was such a special dog. He was definitely my soul dog. He went through huge parts of the formative years of my life with me. He went through a divorce with me, moving all over the place with me, van life with me and Michael, moving to Colorado. So for me, losing him was a really big lesson in grief. And I spent a large part of the year of 2024 learning how to navigate like the loss of him. And there were many moments like that probably are unseen, like you don't see this stuff on Instagram, but I just felt like the sadness and the absence of him. And I still do when I think about him. It is one of the reasons we decided to wait a year before getting another puppy so that I could take my time processing his loss and his love. So number 2 on that list was losing Jose and Yasmin. And you may not know who those people are. You probably don't. Michael and I also lost family this year. It was Michael's cousin and his partner, Yasmin, and they unfortunately died in a tragic canyoning accident in Puerto Rico. So when we lived in Puerto Rico in 2020-21, we had both become really close to them. And it's kind of a crazy story. Jose and Michael didn't know each other for the longest time, but connected in Puerto Rico and found out they were family, which is wild. And they were around our age, maybe like a little bit older, or they were very close in age to us. And, you know, we hadn't seen them. We were planning to see them this year. And, you know, knowing that they're no longer with us is something we think about a lot. And that loss has been definitely hard to process in different ways. They were so young. And it's just definitely one of the worst moments of 2024. Number 3 on my list is getting sick 3 times this year. And those of you with kids are probably laughing because you're like, that happens all the time. But for me, I don't usually get sick very often. I caught COVID. I got a couple of colds with lingering coughs, it felt like, and mostly due to traveling. And because I don't get sick very often, I always find it very frustrating when I do. And now I feel, because of the amount of times I got sick after travel, like I refuse to go to the airport now without a mask, because there was some times where I did wear it and I didn't get sick. And then when I didn't wear it, I did. So now I'm just like a mask person, and nobody seems to wear them anymore in the airports, but I am still rocking it because I just don't like to be sick. And that seems to help. Number 4 on my list of worst moments was I had planned a week-long trip in Crested Butte in Colorado during peak fall colors. I was going to take my van. It was going to be a solo trip. I was going to meet a friend up there for like some of the days. I had that planned actually for like months and months and months. And because I got sick, I wasn't able to do that trip and I had to cancel it. And it was just, for me, like, it's a personal big bummer because it's one of my favorite times of the year. If you've never been to Crested Butte in the fall, it's like beautiful in that time of the year. But whenever I'm congested or I'm sick, I really, really struggle. One thing here in Colorado, it's like I really struggle to go over mountain passes when I have too much congestion because of the pressure in my ear, and it causes me a lot of pain. So that was a big bummer. Number 5 on my worst moments was missing out on hiking the Everest Base Camp trek with my best friend Ashima. So I had originally, at the very beginning of the year, I put it on my bucket list that I wanted to do this with my best friend because she was going to do it. I was like, I'm in, I'll figure out how to do it at the beginning of the year. But ultimately, it was just such a busy year and I had to decide not to go because of all of my other work responsibilities and personal goals that Michael and I had set for ourselves. So that trip in particular is a pretty big time commitment to do the trek. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it work this year. And I feel bummed just because I really wanted to experience that with her because I knew it would have been such a magical, like, friend experience to go on. Number 6 is a lot of my closest friends had babies this year, which is not a worst moment, but I'm just going to explain that a little bit. And like I said, this isn't bad per se, but I definitely personally, you know, being 35, I don't have kids, not quite sure where I stand on that going forward, but I definitely had to navigate like a new reality and find my place in my friendships as their priorities have changed, as they should, right? Mostly though, I do feel like that transition to being like all-star auntie hasn't really actually been as bad as I imagine it. I think it was actually harder for me when they were both pregnant, thinking to myself that everything was going to change instead of leaning into, okay, everything might change and that's okay, which eventually I did. So that transition has actually been a lot smoother than I imagined. And I think I built it up unnecessarily in my head. Number 7 on my list is I wrote down my knee pain. So this is one of those like, I'm getting older lessons. I'm starting to have issues with my left knee anytime that I go on an uphill. I have to pay attention exactly how I place my foot, and then the pain is manageable. But if I don't, I can feel like a really sharp pain in my left knee, which is probably something I should get looked at. But I did recently start using a foam roller with like my upper thigh, and I have noticed the pain to be less because some of my yogi friends were suggesting that I stretch more and, massage that out. So I'm going to try that before resorting to other things, because I do feel like it would be nice to be able to manage it without having to like go to extreme measures. So we'll see how that goes. Number 8 is I worked a lot this year. It's like weird putting that in the worst list, but I think it's worth mentioning. Like, I knew going into 2024 that I wanted to take really big action and I wanted to work hard. So I kind of expected to like be a little exhausted by the year. So thankfully I do love what I do. So long as I'm making sure like to fill my own cup up, and hard work doesn't usually mean burnout for me. I don't think I got to a place of burnout. I do think I would like to find a little better of a balance in 2025 though. So I learned a lot this year. I think having a season, like this year being a season of really hard work, was what I needed, what I wanted. And I have stepped into becoming more disciplined with myself and my work. And I've up-leveled a lot of what we're doing here at She Dreams of Alpine as a result of like kind of setting a standard for myself. So ultimately I'm really proud, but there were moments where I was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like it's been nonstop, and I had to like take a pause and take time for myself. Number 9 on my list, I just think it's always worth mentioning, especially those of you who are trying to start your own business and maybe are looking at me as like somebody who has navigated some success in her business. I want to mention that like I always navigate every year, some forms of self-doubt and imposter syndrome as a business owner, literally every year in different forms. It sounds a little bit different every year, but I'm always navigating that. And this year was no different. It's still something that I actively have to work on. I have to manage my own mind. I have to get coached. This year in particular, we had kind of actually, even though we ended up having a pretty good year compared to other years, we actually had a really hard quarter one financially. For me, that's felt like a lot of pressure, especially because it's not just me on the team. I have 3 employees that I really care about. And the first quarter for me was personally really stressful. So after 6 years of running my own business, I have learned that self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and the low months, that is part of the 50-50 of entrepreneurship. We can never escape the 50-50 experience. So I actually just recently had a conversation with one of my clients, like, you can't avoid the 50-50. All we can do is choose the life that is in alignment with our values, and just know that it also will come with its own flavor of 50-50. And so entrepreneurship is the same thing. I love it. I love what I do. I love that I get to be so creative. I love that I have time and location freedom, but it does have its own side of 50-50. And part of that for me is running my own business and being responsible for a lot of the things and financial things. So knowing that is useful, right? I get to ride those waves for as long as it takes me to get some help, get some coaching, do some self-coaching, and then I get to actively work to get myself inspired and action-taking again. And it's a forever work in progress. And I always try to surround myself with people that remind me that I've got this and I get to work, and the most important thing here, I think, to emphasize is that it's normal and, nothing has gone wrong. Kind of like the theme of the whole reason I'm recording this episode, the best and the worst moments, right? And number 10 on my list of worst moments of 2024, I wrote down car issues and expenses. So 2024 was definitely the year Michael and I had a lot of issues and expenses with our older vehicles. We have a van and a Subaru, both which have over like 120,000 miles on them at this point. And we did have to do some expensive work on both of the cars. And then they both also had to get new tires at the same time. Like they must have had tires put on new at the same time. And then so they were both very bare, and we were getting ready to go into the winter season, and we were like, we cannot have tires like this in Colorado going into winter. So we had to get new tires on the cars as well. So that is my full list of best and worst moments of 2024. And the point is, life is 50-50. The mountains are 50-50. It is both painful and beautiful. We appreciate one side because of the other. When we learn to accept both sides as part of the deal, that's, I think, when we can really thrive. We can know and not kind of compound our pain because we're like experiencing a lone moment by thinking it should be different. When we can remind ourselves that this is the way it's supposed to be, there's less of that compounding our pain, trying to think that life should be different, like arguing with that reality, right? So I hope that this episode has taught you a little bit more about my views about the 50-50 experience. I hope it has given you a peek into my world and inspired you to write your own list of best and worst moments of 2024. If you write one and you feel called to share it with me and my team, please don't hesitate to send them our way. You could always email them to us at support@shedreamsofalpine.com. We would love to read them and kind of be in solidarity with you. So I cannot wait to see what 2025 brings, and I have plans to share some of my goals with you in a future episode, but I know it will come with its own flavor of its best and worst moments. So I hope you enjoyed this. Before I close out this episode, I do want to tell y'all we have a lot of fun things planned for January in 2025 here at She Dreams of Alpine, including a brand new event that we're calling Your Adventure Era Challenge. This is going to be a 5-day free event to help you kick off into an amazing, adventurous 2025, to help you like really craft a vision around what that looks like, to get prepared, organized, like in alignment with the values that you want to step into 2025 with. So we're going to be hosting that free event, that free challenge in January. I think it's January 13th through 17th is when we have it planned. So stay tuned. I think in about 5 days, I should be announcing how you can register for that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. We will also be hosting, for anybody who has been on the wait list or thinking about joining the Backpacking Badass program, we are also going to be hosting an open enrollment for the Backpacking Badass program at the end of January. So if you have goals, like if 2025, you're like, I am going backpacking, or I want to feel more confident as a leader, step into more of my leadership role with backpacking, maybe even go on your first solo backpacking trip in 2025, but you know that you need more support, you want to do it more safely, you want to do it with the skill sets that are going to make you self-sufficient when you hit the trail, then be sure to save the date for around January 20th. This is when we are going to host our very first open enrollment of the year for the Backpacking Badass program. You can join the waitlist for that program at shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist. Now, more details are coming very soon for all of those things that I mentioned. So be sure to check back to the podcast. I will notify you here. And also, if you're on my email list, keep an eye out for my email list on my newsletters on how you can like enroll and register for our free challenge and all the things. So until then, I hope you have a happy holiday, and I will talk to you next week. Bye. Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.